So 9.3, we're going to be solving quadratic equations this time. So I'm going to give you an equation that's going to be like ax squared plus bx plus c, and we're going to have to solve it. So it's going to be set equal to 0, and we're going to try to get x by itself or whatever letter it is. Okay, so standard form for a quadratic is the ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay, and when we're trying to find the roots of the equation, that's when we're going to find the x-intercepts. Okay, so we're going to be also, it's called also finding the zeros. So in this situation, it's going to be, we're trying to find where it crosses the x-axis at. Okay, so if I'm trying to solve by graphing for this one, what I'm going to do is, if I wanted to plug in a couple points, whatever, or I could just add 1 to both sides and get x squared equals 1 and square root. So x equals, whenever we square root when we're solving, we're going to get two different answers. We're going to get plus or minus whatever the square root of 1 is, which is 1. Okay, so that's where it crosses my x-axis at. Okay, and to find the vertex, or to see where it crosses my y-axis at, we plug in 0, right? So if it was y equals x squared minus 1, we'd plug in 0 and we'd get y equals negative 1. So 0, negative 1, and we draw our line. Okay, so in this situation we have two different solutions. So if we try the other one, if we square root both sides, we get x equals 0. So it crosses here. Okay, I want to figure out other points, so let's plug in 1. So if it was y equals x squared, we can replace 0 with y to figure out what the equation is going to look like. So if we get y equals x squared and we replace x with 1 so that we can see where that point is, it would be 1 squared, so 1, 1. So my next point would be here, and then we could mirror it so it would look like this. Okay, so in this situation we only have one solution because it only crosses my x-axis once. We're trying to find the roots. We're trying to figure out how many times it crosses my x-axis. So this one was 2, this one here was 1, and now let's try this other one. So if we get this and we graph it and we plug some points in, we start at, it would be right here and it would go up. So if I plugged in a couple points, you would see that that's what my graph would look like. Okay, this is no solution because it never crosses my x-axis anywhere. Okay, there are no points where it crosses my x-axis, and we're trying to find x-intercepts or the roots. Okay, so now we're going to solve and see if we can find out our roots without graphing it. So first we're trying to get x by itself, so let's add 75 to both sides. I'm going to change colors here. So we're going to get 3x squared equals 75. Got to divide by 3, so x squared equals 25. Okay, the opposite of squaring is square rooting, so we're going to square root both of them. Okay, but my rule when I'm solving something, if we're square rooting, we're always going to get a plus and a minus. Okay, so this is going to be plus or minus the square root of 25, which is 5. So I have two different answers, x equals positive 5 and x equals negative 5. Okay, two different answers. So that is where it's crossing my x-axis at. The reason that it's set equal to 0 here is because when it crosses my x-axis, y always equals 0. So that's why we're plugging in 0 for y to figure out where it's crossing my x-axis at. Okay, so let's try this one. Let's add 36 to both sides. So m squared equals 36. Opposite of squaring is square rooting. So m equals 6, but again, one has to be positive and one has to be negative. So m equals 6 and m equals negative 6, or you can just leave your answer like that. Okay, because whenever you square root, you have a positive and a negative. Okay, so subtract 15. So we get 3x squared is equal to negative 15. Divide by 3. X squared equals negative 5. Square root. We cannot square root a negative. Okay, so my answer for this is no solution. So that means this never crosses my x-axis, because you can never square root a negative like this. Okay, let's try this one. So subtract 16. 4d squared is equal to 16 minus 16 is 0, divided by 4. 0 divided by 4, remember it's okay. So we're allowed to do that. So 0 divided by 4 is 0, so we got d squared equals 0. Square root both sides, so d equals plus or minus 0. So it's crossing my x-axis at positive or negative 0, which there's only one 0, it's 0, 0. Okay, so add 196. We get k squared equals 196. Square root k equals plus or minus square root of 196 is 13. So it's going to be crossing my x-axis at positive 13 and negative 13. Okay, trying to get g by itself, so we got to divide by 4. So g squared is equal to 25 over 4. So we square root both of them. This is one of them that we learned in chapter 10. So I'm going to break it up. So I'm going to square root 25, and then I'm going to square root 4 and replace them. So square root of 25 is 5. Square root of 4 is 2. So I'm going to get plus or minus, don't forget the plus or minus, 5 over 2, because I replaced them back. So g equals plus or minus 5 over 2. Okay, so subtract 25. X squared equals negative 25. Square root both sides. We cannot square root of negative, so my answer for this is no solution. Okay, so that means it never crosses my x-axis. Okay, we can automatically just square root both of them, so n equals plus or minus the square root of 81 is 9, so it's crossing my x-axis at positive 9 and negative 9.